Thank you to the people of the AI Philosophy Group again for hosting this techno-communism conversation. I'm Yohanan Ben Zion, a voice crying out in the wilderness, crying out for a technological New Jerusalem, emphasis on the technological. That should be seen in contrast to the title of this video, suggestive of the path that we are on, a path of largely U.S. enforced or mediated uh, global techno-fascism. You see Elon Musk, a career greenwashing CIA asset, last night on stage showboating with newly elected uh, President Trump, elected yet again. um, and what can one say about such a thing? This is the world's most notorious climate denier. What in any rational analysis does the world's most notorious climate denier have in common with a person who, at least some years ago, had made their career by this thing that I've called greenwashing, that they would call green capitalism? Why would a climate denier and a green capitalist, why would these people be working together? Well, neither of them is either of those things in the truest sense. They are both techno-fascists. They are both people who are um, um, like not just the accelerationists, people like Steve Bannon, who worked so closely with Donald Trump in the years 2017 to 2020. Um, Not just these kind of accelerationists who are who see a capitalism as a way to destroy the existing world order, which must necessarily be destroyed, but not by capitalism, but the capitalistic aspects of it must be destroyed. But the effective accelerationists, the people who would say, I'm not like Steve Bannon, I want to see a good outcome come from AI-driven hypercapitalism. Um, uh, that is Elon Musk writ large. Um, there is no capacity there, none whatsoever, among technologists to build a sustainable system within this hyper-capitalistic framework. The only thing that's accelerated is the extinction of humankind by people like this. And what do these two people really have in common? They would sacrifice humankind in service to financial capital and empire. And you can scarcely find a person in the North American continent, certainly not a European descended person on the North American continent, who does not share these failings. They might not have the resources and influence of a CIA mega asset like Trump or Musk, but they are not willing to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system. And I see dozens and dozens of people who think of themselves as good progressives or good salt of the earth people giving it their best shot at building a better world, crying about the election of President Trump. These are people who are upset that another neoliberal, another person who represents this doomed system, was not elected, a person whose policies, a person who did not even present a policy platform at the beginning of their campaign or substantively throughout, because they have no values, A capitalist is a person who has no values, who only believes in the power of empire and private wealth. It's the only thing that they're interested in, and almost all other things that they say that would seem to be to do with public policy are really equivocation in service to financial capital. And so these people who are upholding crypto fascism rather of the CIA captured, you can look at um, articles like that provided by the World Socialist newspaper, written in 2018, before the Trump re-election, in response to the Trump election. Um, um, Basically, the Democratic Party um, went from being, let's say, um, highly neoliberal but somewhat CIA friendly to having just literal CIA assets and people who worked for the CIA running uh, as Democrats in Congress in many, many dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds when you include all elections. Um, uh, they weren't even trying to hide it anymore because um, they had to make sure that this Mick resistor phenomenon, this response to overt fascism, would not actually materialize into some substantive formations that were anti-fascist. It's okay that people would be angry and say anti-fascist things, but you cannot have the Democratic Party, this party of crypto-fascists, becoming actually anti-fascist. And so the CIA. So what's the result then of having this intelligence agency infiltration become more thoroughgoing in an already heavily infiltrated party? Well, you go from in 2012 or 2016, Democrats having primaries and running on things like universal health care to having nothing of the kind. That did not occur in 2024. Um, this uh, there is no more odious creature than the European descended North American fascist pig. Um, they just voted for an overt fascist. By and large, many of those people were voting out of some kind of frustration with that system because they imagine that person to be no different from the crypto fascists. They recognize that, as perhaps you and I do, and they imagine that some anti-establishment thing might derive from this. Um, um, One thing that's different from 2016 is in that respect is the Gaza genocide, the murder of pushing up to 500,000 Palestinians being starved to death or blown to bits in the last year by the fascist puppet state of the fascist United States, known as Israel. And So these people are thinking that maybe this slight mix-up of Trump, who you notice did not run on draining the swamp again as he did in 2016, to get himself in that position of being seen as a serious political operative. Um, he didn't run on that this time because everybody knows he didn't drain the swamp. Everybody knows that only not merely capitalistic interests, but far-right neoconservative and neoliberal interests were represented by that administration. This is again, um, now this is most assuredly a fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you kind of situation. But these people um, uh, see that perhaps some of the brassy sassiness of Donald Trump will maybe somehow um, um, alter the balance of geopolitics to some degree, and that was probably a factor. But most people, of course, are mostly responding with very limited information to their own economic circumstances, but not so much that they would consider that there's no economic system at all when the U.S. enforced omnicide causes runaway overheating um, from capitalism's climate apocalypse after 2029, as every serious climate scientist says they will, or that even if we were not on that path, that their interests are not represented by rightist or far rightist economic system under any circumstances as workers. They imagine themselves to be temporarily embarrassed billionaires, to quote John Steinbeck. They imagine themselves to be capitalists. You are not capitalists, my friend, if you work for someone else. You're not capitalist, really, even if you're running something that you think of as a small business. Many people in this group might be consultants, something along those lines. A more blurry category there relative to the big bourgeoisie, but you are not capitalists if you're not independently wealthy or owning a factory, a large factory, things along those lines. Um, so by and large, these people who perceive themselves to be capitalists or are upholding this capitalist system, it's more accurate to describe them as fascist sympathizers. So a country full of, overwhelmingly full of fascist sympathizers, is it then surprising that a fascist gets elected over and over again? No, no, not in the slightest. It's not surprising in the slightest. Um, we have to do this thing that does accelerate the death of the species. These effective accelerationists, or people representing the singularitarian, the technological singularitarian worldview, as described by persons like Ray Kurzweil. These are people who are constitutionally incapable of actually building a humane and sustainable economic system. They're constitutionally incapable of building this thing, green capitalism. No more capable of that than Elon Musk, who, when times changed and his resources grew, became less this person who could be passed off as a person doing this legitimate greening, and more the overt fascist. And this is this because Ray Kurzweil is really in his heart an evil bastard pretending to be a good person? Maybe not. Maybe not. It's from beginning your work um, from a fundamentally flawed position, working within this fascist system. And I am guilty of this in this in the years of the first Trump era. I started working with these kinds of people, TESCREAL folks, specifically the United States Transhumanist Party and a few other um, somewhat affiliated organizations there. Um, and that was a mistake, right? Um, Working with imagining that you're going to present some reform positions to an audience by working with far right neoliberals is a recipe for self sabotage. And I could say, oh, these 30 people, most of them are right wing think tank rats. Most of them are crypto fascists. Some of them are literal intelligence assets. Um, um, but the problems are systemic, and the problems are quite specifically fascistic. that is to say, anti-communistic. If you are not willing to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system, if you're not willing to join organizations and work with others to build a humane and sustainable economic system and aver those strategies of um, um, and they must be more averred by sensible people in the fascist United States than perhaps in other places. So this creates some differences there. If you're in a small place without a military-industrial complex, it's more realistic to pursue some reform strategy. The Mexico, a place that has had rightist tendencies and has certainly been sabotaged by the fascist United States, nevertheless has a significantly socialistic female president, um, um, Claudia Scheinbaum, I believe is her name, and um, 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 I've talked at great length about the election of um, an also reasonably Marxist person in the form, also in Latin America, in the form of Salvador Allende. Um, that is of more interest to cyber communists because that person was building a technological planned economy that could have been the basis for AI run economic systems taking root in this world had that not been sabotaged by the fascist United States. So when you're looking at things to do with advanced computing, things to do with novel systems, a thing which AI philosophers are quite uniformly going to be interested in. You also have to be willing to have, starting from these better fundamentals, being willing to have that self-reflection. If you're not a person who is willing to stand up for a humane and sustainable economic system and willing to take the hit of not working with overt fascists like those of the fascist West or its only slightly less evil North Atlantic allies, this Western world generally. If you are not prepared to do the real work of organizing and having the courage of your convictions to stand against the omnicide, your work is not going to be fruitful. And by and large, the AI philosophers that I encounter, these are people with this centrist tendency, wanting to work within the system wherever they might happen to be, and there are higher concentrations of them um, uh, in this in this fascist West milieu. So these people will um, overwhelmingly be quite self-deceived. When you bring up the problems of runaway overheating and capitalism's climate apocalypse, even in the context of advanced computing, um, they change. They are quite quick to change the subject, and it's not something that we can do. Again, this quality of self-deception is the difference between the failure of the crypto-fascist Harris campaign, having no even reform tendencies, much less representing anything close to this impulse to build a sustainable system. Um, what, but nevertheless, many people who describe themselves as wanting things like a public health service or even a housing authority guaranteeing all Americans housing or substantial worker protections. Many people wanting those things very badly were nevertheless very much vote blue no matter who um, in 2024. And um, uh, what what is a result of this? This the 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 ruling elites have no ideology except for wanting to protect private wealth and being willing to do or say anything to the gullible populace to see that empire and private wealth are put first. Um, this situation again is even worse than that because uh, we know that runaway overheating from the largely U.S. caused omnicide is not just a near term possibility, but a near certainty by a specific date, 2029. Um, and there, I didn't want to be doing some kind of doom posting, so I'll change the subject to this thing that I generally talk about, which is the people's superintelligence and the building of an open source large language model workgroup that serves as a workforce multiplier, um, a thing which I would hope to present as an alternative to this kind of a doomerist philosophy. And the it only works, however, if it's built to size and strength of many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands at least of user comrades within a network like that. For one thing, in that time frame, 2025 to 2029, it's not a certainty that open source large language models individually will become artificially generally intelligent or become the basis of a super intelligent phenomena um, working within those hyper-capitalistic strictures that most of you are really tending to work within. Um, but this thing, the work group, where which could be built on either um, physically, individually hosted open source large language models on computers with GPUs, or virtually any machine by creating a kind of portal wherein um, um, the virtual GPU is utilized, and that um, by the technology of today would require relying on for-profit third-party providers at that stage. Um, Unfortunately, there's um, relatively few options for doing anything good in this world that are not, to some degree, befouled by capitalistic filth. Um, um, so it seems a minor miracle that even this thing that is for the purposes of building a people superintelligent, sufficient, even though it's not highly agentic, the open source large language model of late 2024, it's sufficiently agentic, 30% of the way there, enough to create a human steered work group where nevertheless the power of this proto AI agent is substantial enough in this agentic mass of things that are specially tailored to work together with one another. You can see this phenomena. The concept of multi-agent systems has been around for quite a while, and you can see demonstrations of multi-agent systems in this context specifically. You can point even to people who would be, I think, pretty reasonable anecdotal evidence. People like some open source software developers who now work more with AI agents in their open source operations, and as a result, have gone from people who maybe usually don't have things like um, um, sushi money to people who are a little more comfortable because of this use specifically of large language model multi-agent systems within their limited operations. Um, this um, um, the building of, I had someone reach out to me and I was not in a good mood. Woke up with a headache this morning, so maybe I should apologize to that person, Fee. Um, but generally, if a person who is kind of would seem to be self-described as a transhumanist approaches me, my first instinct is to kind of make it clear that I'm a cybernetic communist, and I'm not going to uh, be jerked around by any crypto fascists anymore. And maybe I'm going to turn aside some legitimate opportunities by responding to people this way, but by and large, my experience with these terrestrial people has been that they're quite contemptible and basically wreckers, right? Person who says they want to do a good thing, but then immediately pivots to working in this far-right neoliberal way. I had a 2020 campaign manager who was this kind of person, just human garbage, just a neo-reactionary human garbage, coming to me and saying, "Oh, I'm glad that we, managed to avoid the problem of neo-reactionaries, open neo-reactionaries, taking over the United States Transhumanist Party. We owe you a big debt for that. But now you have to work with these other 15 other neo-reactionaries who already are in the party, including me." This is just a CIA cutout, this thing, the United States Transhumanist Party. It's fucking worthless. It's still that way. It's almost unfair to single them out, right? Because no tech organization in the United States is not more or less operating in this way, having some right-wing think tank in charge and operating, more or less just getting a list of talking points and operational necessaries emailed to them from Peter fucking Thiel, and that's the whole operation, right? Is doing more harm than good, by far doing more harm than good. And so, the last of these talks, which is not posted to the AI philosophy group, at least not at first, I don't recall. I begged people outside of the imperial core, outside of the fascist United States, and its fascistic allies, to do this thing. That's to say, work on building a specially tailored open source large language model. Perhaps, as I said, it's impossible to entirely avoid the problematic thing, so you might at first be focusing on using Llama 3.2, which is, as you know, developed by another of these CIA cutouts, the Meta organization, but is nevertheless open source enough to be the basis for some of this kind of work. Open source large language model work group shouldn't have to be said, would not necessarily only rely on using one flavor of a large language model. There could be a lot of large language models arrayed in this work group, so long as they are modified to work together, and so long as the human beings in the loop are doing the work to see that all of that's the case, and that the operation stays on the rails, and that good work is done. This thing could quite quickly grow to be something that meets, in my view, the definition of super intelligent formation. Uh, Oftentimes, uh, individualistic philosophy of the Western world makes us want to define superintelligence as a singleton, as one a single entity, rather than a thing which, in some, is super intelligent, even though the individual nodes might be quite far from that. And this essential failing is really why Western technophiles and technologists talk about things like artificial general intelligence and superintelligence, but don't really actually build it, at least generally not as well or as quickly as they would say they would. You know, the artificial intelligent single operator was promised at almost from the moment this word was coined, artificial intelligence, in the late 1950s. They said, oh, within a few years we'll have this thing that will be able to assist the military-industrial complex of the fascist United States, and it'll be located in a server room and a mainframe room in international business machines. And man, it's going to be awesome. It'll be smarter than a person. That was not the case. But I would contend that really that self sabotage of the capitalistic and imperialistic mandate is a problem. Because these kinds of people, when they were presented with the possibility of a technological planned economy that would have been the seed of a people's superintelligence in short order, had been allowed to thrive, their impulse was to commit genocide, to not just destroy the Allende administration, leading to his death, but the thing that, of course, Chile of that period is most infamous for, the murder of many, many, many tens of thousands of people by this fascist dictator Pinochet, who was installed by the fascist United States to stop this technological planned economy from inspiring the rest of the world in the way that in 1917 the beginning of state socialism had inspired the world to do many such things, including the United States in a limited way, building things like um, uh, the National Pension Program for retirees, and a limited and over a few years of limited makings of something like a public health service, but one that would tend to only serve European descended retired workers, and by and large, um, the system is designed to murder people, to murder working people, specifically darker skinned working people. Um, so when you have such a bevy of contradictions in every facet of what is done, how can you expect a thing like people's superintelligence or some then of that strength to emerge? And by and large, that explains why the AI philosopher is so ambivalent to general intelligence and superintelligence. They say, well, we want this thing, but also we fear this thing. That's every other word of their mouth, out of their mouth. They're constantly contradicting themselves. Even one person will be saying this in the course of one conversation. I want superintelligence, but also I fear superintelligence. Over and over again, back and forth, they'll be saying this. It's not superintelligence, of course, that they fear. The people's superintelligence would not have this potential for existential risk. The existential risk derives from private wealth and empire, the things that are currently killing the planet, being reckless and cruel as they are, further empowered by this superpower. That's to say, possessing the superintelligence type effects furthering this hyper-capitalistic outcome, this accelerationist outcome, which is no acceleration um, except the acceleration of the extinction of humankind, or um, an extremely racist outcome where many billions of people in the global south die before the thing is stabilized, or before the economic system that is at fault there is done away with. So what happens is a genocide worse than the previous, also European derived genocides of people in the global south, on ongoing phenomena, whether or not um, superintelligence is at fault. But it is. And well, maybe we'll try to ask a question of our chatbot friend along these lines. It might not be working. Yeah. Uh, More and more problems with this right now. Um, okay, computer. I want to talk about people's superintelligence and contrast it with the problematic factors, accelerationism and effective accelerationism, these hyper capitalistic effects. We've talked about building a people's superintelligence using open source large language model work groups. Give us a breakdown of the philosophical ideas behind all of these things, the problems with capitalism in contrast is to cybernetic socialism and cybernetic communism, and then a little bit of a technical background on the open source proxy hive mind or large language model work group. Yeah, it's not working. I knew that was going to happen. Um, well, the focus of people in these AI philosophy conversations is correctly on things like open source or decentralizing of power structures, forms. Um, this is a correct approach, um, but um, so many of the people and movements that have this focus prove to be less than productive because of, in my view, this lack of this good fundamental, um, this cyber communistic analysis, which is focused on the building of a humane and sustainable economic system above all other things, and focused on using the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history, advanced computing, to do this. You might have the more or less a correct priority with that second thing, but if you are still carrying around a lot of conservative or capitalistic ideological baggage, as opposed to the deeper understanding of liberation and revolutionary thought, the only things that have produced in practice humane and sustainable economic systems, the impulse, driving the impulse to build public health services and housing authorities in some portion, if not most of the world to some degree, that was a phenomena to do with state socialism, derived from state socialism, and by and large, the present day rules based order, the US fascist rules based order, is a response in a negative to this a situation. There was not, uh, for, fascism was born, in contrast to state capitalism, was born in 1917 before before the Second World War. The United States had no real prominently visible intelligence services at all. There's a couple people doing dastardly things along those lines. Um, um, but the CIA-run world emerged in response to stopping a world revolution. And so if that is the system that you're upholding, the system that emerged to kill 300 million people, according to the workbook Endless Holocausts, mostly in wars of theft and anti-communist wars and other genocidal actions short of open warfare. Um, if that's the system that you think you're going to somehow reform, you are a crypto fascist, and you probably thought, oh, you know, liberals do this thing where they always a communist will always say, yeah, I'm not a big fan of voting because we need to do things far beyond that to build a humane and sustainable economic system. We have to vote with the bullet rather than the ballot. A communist will always be quite honest about this. In contrast to the capitalistic person, the liberalistic impulse to lie to themselves and others. So you ask a liberal, who do you vote for? They often won't answer. Uh, you ask a conservative, who did you vote for? They often won't answer. This is not true of people um, who are more intellectually honest. Um, and I will leave you with this thought that um, you dramatically handicap yourself as an intelligence yourself by this lack of intellectual honesty, dramatically so. I mean, Jesus Christ, Ben Zion is a pretty dumb fucking guy, right? But I've run circles around people who have more complicated stuff going on, just by virtue of this fact of not being willing to lie to myself or others in these philosophical fundamentals. And anyone could be better served um, in this only real project that matters, the building of the sustainable world, by taking that wisdom to heart. And it might not put more sushi money in your pocket in the short term, but there's no difference between you being in a higher or lower tax bracket on a planet that after 2029 will become increasingly uninhabitable to human beings. All right? That's a strange priority to prioritize comfort or the workings of the economic system itself when you know this to be happening, and you do. So again, don't be that self-deceived person. Thank you.